Ist ein Nerd. Shorty sagt, sie geht nicht ran, weil du sie nervst. Nimm das nicht so ernst. Du bist ein Nerd. Shorty sagt, sie geht nicht ran, weil du sie nervst. Nimm das nicht so. Ich mach nur Spaß. Würde ich ernst machen. What is in your heart? Ich mach nur Spaß. Bist du mein Hobby, weil du bist ein Clown. Ich scam mit deine Mom und deine Sister auch. She play with my heart, but we play Twister now. Einmal linken reicht und ich drücke auf den Trigger drauf. Bist ein Lame, Bro. Du hast deine Gun, aber triffst nichts mit diesem Aim, Bro. Ich bin krank, aber I never take a day off. Bro, du bist gefeuert, Bruder, du bist laid off. Ich scam dich, mach Tattoo, aber it came off. Dein Girl findet mich gut, ich bin ein Trapper. All die harte Arbeit paid off. Homie ist verzweifelt wegen Shorties wie Kratos. Ich bin rich und ich hab Money, bin ein Trade God. Homie, du bist Krypto-Loser, kein Jeff Bezos. Ich stacke Racks, ich stacke Scheine, so wie Legos. Deine Shorty nervt dich bei mir, wir wecken die Neighbors. Du bist ein Nerd. Shorty sagt, sie geht nicht ran, weil du sie nervst. Nimm das nicht so ernst. Du bist ein Boss. Würde ich ernst machen. What is in your heart? Ich mach nur Spaß. Ich mach nur schwachen Hass und du bist ein Nerd. Shorty sagt, sie geht nicht ran, weil du sie nervst. Nimm das nicht so ernst. Du bist ein Nerd. Shorty sagt, sie geht nicht ran, weil du sie nervst. Nimm das nicht so.
We are the goblins. We are the goblins. We are the goblins. We are the goblins for wars, but they don't know who we are. Know who we are. We are the goblins. We are the goblins. We are the goblins. We are the goblins. We are the goblins for wars, but they don't know who we are. Know who we are.
Hello? Hello. Okay. Mic check. Whoa. Music, stop. Mic check. Hopefully. This is good. Hello. Welcome to part 2 of my Goblin stream. My name is Des, and today I'm a cat. Alright, we're good? Okay, we're good. Oh. Alright, so last time I streamed, I talked ad nauseum about goblins throughout folklore and literature, and it was kind of a mess. Not gonna lie. That's one thing about me. The first time I do anything, it's probably gonna be a mess. But I learn and I take notes, and I'm just gonna consider that like my cold opening, and done some adjustments, and I'm ready for round 2. So before I start, back where I kind of left off, I'm gonna try and round up part 1 as quickly as I can, and I've sorted everything out, and excuse me, if I ironed out my visual aids. So, oh Jesus, that's my little office goblin horking in the background. Pardon him. Where was I? So yeah, consider this like a do-over of my last stream, kind of. I don't know exactly how long this stream is gonna go, all in all, because I'm not psychic, but, well, kind of. I am, but I'm not. I'm only psychic when I have something to go off of, and I don't know how long it's gonna take me to get through like 20 pages of notes and audio visual media. So since this is my first time doing a big stream like this, so lucky viewers from the future who are watching the stream via the replay can look at that runtime and be like, holy shit, this cat talks for how many hours about goblins? But for us here in the present, yeah, I don't have a fucking clue. So grab a drink and a snack and strap in, cause I'm gonna talk fast and loose about some gobbledygoops for a while. Oh, and just and also bear with me as I figure out my audio visual mediums. So my whole purpose, my whole thesis, if you will, for this whole video deep dive into goblins, expose, if you will, is all entirely the fault of Joanne Karen Rowling, better known by her author name of J.K. Rowling. And as we know, over her career as a beloved children's book author, she has made some very curious decisions regarding her world building choices in like many different ways, right? But I'm just going to try and focus on tropes and traits that she used to create her goblin race of characters specifically. And we'll see how she obviously pulled from all over folklore and fairy tales, religious myths, and even real-life historical events for her books. Like any successful author should, right? But we can tell a lot about an author by examining what pieces they've pulled from where and how they puzzle them all together to create their own unique brand of, well, in today's case, Goblin Guy. And just so we're clear, I'm not attempting to make any assumptions or accusations about Joanne at all. Not at all. I don't want to insinuate that she has any bad intentions or is like an actual fucking Nazi or anything like that. No. The spiciest take I really want to make in regards to Joanne is that I personally, in my personal opinion, I think she's a bad author and not a very mindful world builder. But that's it. That's just my opinion. You know, I'm entitled to that. Excuse me. Whoa. So whatever else I might imply by the following facts I give, or historical parallels, or slips of my tongue, or just coincidence, I'm explicitly not implying Joanne is anything more than maybe a bad author, in my opinion. Maybe. Okay? Pardon. So, if I start to rip into anyone or anything, just keep in mind this is all for entertainment purposes and maybe some education. Educainment? You know, where you're educated and entertained at the same time. Yeah, that's the goal here. Anyway, except when it comes to when I talk about the Nazis, my distaste for them is genuine. Yeah, fuck those guys. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's just go back over to what I said about goblins in the past. So previously, I tried to lay out what exactly goblins represent throughout folklore and history. But to sum it up, he's just a weird little guy. Sometimes they're short or ugly or hairy or frog-like. And sometimes they're more spirit rather than beast. Almost always they're more humanoid rather than demonoid. And going back to the first oral editions of the old fable and folklore of the benevolent goblin, which is what this text is supposedly. But back to the old folklore tropes, goblins are generally depicted as odd but neutral figures, maybe kind of dirty, maybe kind of smelly, and they can offer both riches to kind of person or ruin to a selfish person, which seems reasonable enough, really. They're pretty much just a useful allegory for how to be kind to people, how to be kind to strangers. So where exactly did all of this go wrong? Well, it was mostly around the time of the Kalinka. Well, I did talk about the Kalinka a little bit. But often when in folklore, goblins were also associated with the underworld and caves and stuff like that. But more in relation with the theme that of like the winter season. And so like when the nights are the longest and the days are the coldest. So they sometimes were associated with winter, with the spirits of winter as well, and Christmas, which is where we get a lot of our little Christmas elf and Christmas goblin myths. It's really interesting that goblins are very tied to like kind of a Christmas mischief guy throughout history and folklore. So, like, rather than emerging from hell to do harm, these little neutral sprites or spirits are who appear at a time when the veil between the spirit realm and the mortal realm is the thinnest, which is the winter solstice. And in Greek folklore, this specific Christmas-associated goblin was called the Kalinka. And this association connected to the same cosmic mythos universe where we get our basic stories for Christmas and Christmas ghosts. And this is even how some goblins eventually turned into Santa's elves. It's kind of the same cosmos. But it's also in the flimsy association with the darkness and the underground. In Christmas, that sub-goblins of folklore gained a reputation for being something more akin to or parallels for a true form of a person or a child who is unchristian. And we get a lot of association of goblins themselves with Christianity as an antithesis to all good Christian children. So that gets weird. And it's even said in Greek folklore that a child born with mental or physical deformities, or just being bold enough to have been born on Christmas Day, like the baby Jesus. Yeah, I know. So much so that this could create the unchristian others, and thus they were said to be goblins and were seen as disposable was especially during a time when humans were casually being disposed of for various inhumane reasons, like during the Crusades, or just good old ableism. So that's nice. And we're gonna lead up to more dark history. But first, another side of dark history. Dark fairy tale lore. So this I went over last time too, a bit more, but it was all over the place. So it's kind of through this Christmas and Christian connection that we get a lot of depictions of goblin guys throughout Victorian literature. And this is where goblins themselves begin to be depicted as an unchristian outsider in literature directly. And when juxtaposed to a pure protagonist, they often take on the threatening or dangerous role of evil little antagonists, like in the Goblin Market. Here, I'll give you this cool picture of, and they're often either a defiler of the innocent, or mischievous trickster guys, or fucking not guys at all. I had gone over some of these previously, but in 1844 in Charles Dickens's A Goblin Story, the goblins in said story are actually spirits in a bell. And in other ones, the goblins are a riddle giver, or an adventure haver, or just a homie, just a guy who has a quest, or perhaps just likes jam enough that he wants to trade you jam for all your books. Or wait, he'll trade you his books for jam. I don't know. There's one about jam and books, though. I think that's the Goblin in the Grocer. Anyway. Where was I? And if we can see, throughout the dates here, we're going to be staying in this kind of date range where these same stories are being told throughout Victorian England and even in America. And this is the time date range that other things were happening in Europe at the same time. So to say that goblins have never stood in for an unchristian other within literature, that's something that they do. And it's not necessarily a bad thing unless the author makes it a bad thing. Which, we're getting there. So, I have a bit of other goblins from all over Europe. So, this is just what, goblins all over the world maintain this universal, root in this cosmic human mythos. And wherever they appear, they tend to keep some similar traits all throughout. Whether it's just being a weird little guy who's willing to help out a friend but willing to fuck up a foe, or just like a little bit magical. A lot of them have some sort of innate earth magic to them, or sometimes like a fucked up shit magic, literally. Goblins can be weird. They can be just seen as like weird guys. Like, we all know a weird guy, right? It's not necessarily a bad thing. Where am I at? Okay. Yeah, so all over the world we have the dokebi in Korea. Korean goblins, pretty much. And they're inherently magical. They like to wrestle, like kind of their I added some unique traits here, if you can read that. I don't expect you to read that, but if you're interested, dokebi are often blamed for misfortunes, and they carry a club, and they like to wrestle. But otherwise, they're just like other goblins. And then in North American folklore, in the Wampanoag region, that's kind of like, I think it's like around modern day Delaware, you have the pukwudgie, and they're uniquely spiky boys. They're like a hedgehog and a goblin combined, and they're also tricksters. And I think that it's interesting to note that they're also in Joanne's Wizarding universe. She includes them and even mentions that they are a distant relative to the European goblin. And they're actually one of the Ivermony, or whatever it's called, the North American like equivalents of Hogwarts. They have houses too. And they take a lot from North American mythology, and that's a whole nother. I probably won't get into that, but and I don't have the essay that laid it out pretty well. But pretty much, Joanne, she is not good at taking other cultures' mythology and mixing it into her own. Anyway, in her books, the pukwudgie are symbol. They're an Ilvermorny house. They represent the heart. They favor healers, and they're a distant relative to European goblins. Okay, and then in South America, in the Central Andes, we have the Mucky. But there are cave goblins and cave guys that are just exist as like a legend or lore in the Andes Mountains, often for miners in the region. And they often wear a helmet and have a lamp on their head. And in modern days, they wear more like modern mining outfits, but they have been around in legend for centuries. And a bunch of different descriptions of these little guys, but they're pretty much just hide in mines, help out miners, and they have special magic over the earth and can help. They can like soften metal veins and help miners find metal. So, like, alright, cool. I like them. So then we got like modern day goblins. Like in The Hobbit, which, fun fact I found out while researching that there was a 1964 BBC interview with Tolkien where he admitted that the Jewish-inspired race in his novels are actually his dwarves, not his goblins. He explicitly stated that. So there's that. And then the Labyrinth, which they will steal babies, but you know, mostly homies. very diverse crowd. And then in World of Warcraft, we have... I talked about them a bit. I like them as an example because they really walk the line between some of the more anti-Jewish tropes that exist. Hold on, my dog needs to get in here. What is wrong? Come on. No. Don't grumble at me. Okay. Excuse me. Where was I? Yeah. World of Warcraft. I think these guys especially really walk the line between maybe using some Jewish stereotypes, and that they got the gold thing going, and the New York thing going, and but World of Warcraft and the writers behind the lore of World of Warcraft, they really do something unique with their goblins, which makes them something all of their own, and they're just completely different. They have a love for tinkering and blowing things up. They're so obsessed with blowing things up. Sorry if you hear a goblin in the background here. I have two little doggo gobbos who I'm gonna try and interrupt me. Alright. Was I gonna talk about Jewish people yet? What? Oh wait, no. We're not here yet. Hold on. She's not having it. Okay. Pardon me. Okay. So, my whole point here that I'm trying to make, before going there, to Joanne's Goblins, and I think I might have gotten it lost in my last stream, and that is that I want to be very clear. An author who uses goblins as a stand-in for any real-life human race or ethnicity or any kind of people, that's not what I'm implying is bad writing at all. I really, really believe that goblins can be used to really great effect. I believe that goblins can be used to really great effect. To represent outsiders or others in a very real human allegories. Even using them to tackle really dark fucking subjects. But before I get to my first super dark subject, URNT. Oh yeah. That's what this part was. About Dungeons and Dragons goblins, which I'm a little bit of a goblin of myself. So other types of goboids that you may not be aware of. Here's some little tidbits. Red caps, which are just goblins that may be confused with mushrooms. Like they got mushroom hats. A kobold is also technically a goblin, but they mostly appear more rat-like or have tails. But in Dungeons and Dragons 5e, yep, they are dragonoids. I don't know where that came from. And bugbears I love bugbears. They're big and strong and furry goblins. I, I'm not sure exactly where they came from, as far as lore goes. I couldn't really figure that out, whether they're like hired by goblins or if it's like some kind of inherited goblin mutation, like some kind of, like your mom could be a goblin and your dad could be a hobgoblin and you could be a bugbear. It's something to think about. That's the great thing about D&D with these kind of things too, because you can explore these fantasy tropes in, like, a setting that's meant to fuck around in. And also hobgoblins are just larger, more friendly, more independent goblins, kind of like usually more civilized sometimes, like a household goblin. And then things that are not goblins, just to be clear, imps are not goblins. Imps, they are from hell, and they are demons, and they're, or sometimes from, not hell. Either way, they serve gods. Goblins serve either themselves or witches, apparently, according to lore. Orcs are taller and they're meaner, but they're also green. Ogres are bigger and dumber and smellier, but not green always. Trolls are very similar, but at least in World of Warcraft, they're more reggae and not goblins explicitly. Gnomes are earth spirits and similar, often. Maybe have the same mushroom hat in lore or in folklore, but they're distinct from goblins. Goblins tend to be dirtier, a little grosser. Elves are also earth spirits, and I'm not even gonna get into elves because there's like a whole frigging gamut of what elves are. That's a whole different box of gobos. Leprechauns. Oh, well, yeah. Well, goblins are tangentially related to elves in the Christmas sense, but gosh, it's so complicated. I'm just gobbed out at this point. Can't wait to be done with this stream and just like I can not think about goblins for a while. Maybe. We'll see. Anyway, leprechauns. They're like goblins, but they're just Irish elves, actually. The Smurfs, probably not goblins? Maybe. But they're blue. Specifically, that's the thing with Smurfs. Gremlins. Gremlins are not goblins, specifically. Even if they're like green and doing fucked up things. In the early 1900s, gremlins were specifically like a World War I foe for machinery saboteurs. They for World War I Air Force mechanics. We're all about the goblins, and Roald Dahl actually wrote about goblins. And then in 1984, there was the movie about goblins. Again, a Christmas movie. See? And then there's a Green Goblin, and that's not a goblin at all. That's a crazy guy in a suit that loves spiders. Oh wait, no. He hates spiders. Real goblins love spiders. Right. Okay. So another type of goblin we have, which, here we go. With that said, I want to show you all a prime example of a goblins as a race used really well in a novel series, and that's in the Terry Pratchett's Discworld series. There we go. And I kind of went over this before, but I want to make sure that this part is comprehensible. because I think it's pretty important to show. So Discworld goblins are also described as like your run-of-the-mill weird little guy, but they have one very noticeable difference to them, and that's where this quote comes from, and I'll read it right now. Everything that is expelled from a goblin's body was clearly a part of them once, and should therefore be treated with reverence and stored properly so that it can be entombed with its owner within the fullness of time. So, yeah. Pratchett makes sure that his brand of goblins is, just to put it bluntly, they're gross as fuck. They're smelly. They keep and store all their bodily waste in little jars that they call ungu pots, which also turn out to be a kind of like reservoir for their magical abilities. Like, for instance, in one scene, like a character smokes a cigar that's laced with some ungu pot juice, and then he becomes possessed by a dead goblin child. So, like, strong magic, but fucking gross. And so it's like through these same unsavory qualities that make these, make like the locals and other characters in the Discworld series, they view them as vermin and expendable. But they also view them as fine slaves for a tobacco plantation. Do you see where this is going? So, then many atrocities are committed against the Discworld's gobbo solely due to the fact that they're weird and they're smelly. Eventually, over the course of the events of the novel, the locals are convinced of the humanity of the goblins due to the vocal talents of a young goblin girl, which reminded me of some Five Goes West, and that's why there's a mouse there. Anyway. So, over the course of the events of the novel, locals eventually are convinced that goblins are more than smelly vermin, and by the end of the novel, the goblins gain their freedom, and at the very end of the novel, sorry, spoilers. Anyway, at the very end of the novel, somebody writes their own novel about their experiences, and they call it Pride and Extreme Prejudice. So, yeah. Did I? Okay, right. I lost track a little bit. Just like ungu pots. So yeah. As we can see here, like with Terry Pratchett, in his Discworld series, and especially in the novel Snuff, goblins are literally stand-ins for a real. And for him, in Discworld, it's not Jewish people, surprisingly. It's black people, obviously. And throughout the novel, they're degraded and they're othered, they're enslaved and genocided, but as an author, Terry Pratchett consciously gives us a good reason why they are othered so much, and that's like they're gross. Like, they're actually gross. Like, they keep their poop in jars with them at all times. That's understandable why you might not invite him to your house, right? And yet still, Discworld goblins are continuously used to illustrate that even the grossest, smelliest, weirdest, freakiest little guys deserve humanity. And I think that that's really an important point. And with that, I'm going to play my first clip. Where are you? So because I'm not going to talk about house elves in J.K. Rowling's books, but obviously the house elves of her books are more akin to the goblins in Terry Pratchett novels. So how exactly does J.K. treat the house elves in her novels? So for that, I'm gonna use a clip from Sean's video here.
Now, the other major house elf character in the books is Kreacher, who Harry inherits after the death of Sirius Black, so our main character becomes a slave owner. That's nice. Kreacher is depicted as miserable and insulting. He's horrible to everyone, and everyone is horrible to him in return. Harry also inherits Sirius's house, 12 Grimmauld Place, which is decorated with decapitated slave heads. And in the novel where this house first appears, The Order of the Phoenix, at Christmas time, our main characters decorate the house for Christmas, which involves putting little Father Christmas hats and beards on the slave heads. So our heroes decide to decorate their decapitated slave heads with little Christmas hats. Now, I'm going to need to hit pause here, next to the Christmas slave heads, and ask, what is happening right now? Why are the Harry Potter books like this? And we're going to have to go on a few tangents here, but stick with me. So, say you're an author and you want to put slavery as a theme into your children's fantasy series. Now, how do we do that? Well, there's a few ways to go about it. The first is to just make the only slave owners bad people, right? So only the bad characters like the Malfoys own slaves, and all the good characters oppose it. Maybe there's a political effort to free the slaves, but the old racist pureblood families keep using their wealth and power to block it, right? So you've got a very clear good-bad dividing line on the issue of slavery. That's the simplistic, straightforward way to do it. The more complicated way to do it is have slavery be a systemic issue inherent to the whole wizarding society. And at first glance, it seems that this is what Rowling is going for. Characters who are otherwise presented as good people defend slavery. Hagrid argues it's in their nature, Ron says they like being slaves, Molly wishes she had a slave to do the laundry even though she can do housework by magic, and so on. And this systemic problem is even explicitly tied to the rise of the main antagonist of the series. Now, you might expect the main character of this story to be an outsider, freshly introduced into the wizarding world, who can see through the inequalities that they take for granted, who can introduce a new perspective. But Harry is not given that role. It's given instead to Hermione, and only to mock how silly it is. Now, the real issue comes at the end of this story, because if you want to have a happy ending where your characters triumph, where evil is conquered, where all is well, then the systemic problem of slavery requires a systemic resolution, i.e. the slaves have to be freed, or all is not well, is it? But what we need to understand here is that J.K. Rowling can't free the slaves in her story.
No. Okay.
This is the reason she has to backpedal.
Right. He goes into a lot more in this video. Yeah. Here, let me link this video. In the gym. So Sean goes into a lot more in this video here, and I highly recommend it. It's quite long, and he really digs into the series altogether and kind of brings it's not comprehensive, but I recommend that. And I bring this up because Sean also brings up snuff within this. And I am just gonna play the clip, this part where Sean talks about the novel Snuff, because I think it really ties this
to work on tobacco plantations. So the crime to be solved in this crime novel is the slavery of a sapient magical race. Now, most people on the Discworld think of the goblins more as pests than as people. Goblins are small and weird, and they have cultural and spiritual practices that are difficult for outsiders to understand. For instance, they store all of their bodily secretions in little pots that they carry around. The dominant society of the Discworld is undergoing a change akin to our Industrial Revolution, with the advent of technologies like trains and wireless communication, and this society does not see goblins as useful. It sees them as outsiders, as savages, and they're treated like vermin. So when Vimes arrives in the countryside for his holiday and finds that the local pub is called the Goblin's Head, and that there is an actual stuffed goblin head mounted on the wall, he doesn't think too much of it. After all, it's only a goblin, isn't it?
Like the Christmas goblin heads in Harry Potter decorating the wall. Sad.
If there's a hierarchy of cultures on the Discworld in terms of power they have and respect they receive, the goblins are very much on the bottom. And intelligently here, Pratchett shows how the attitude that the goblins are somehow lesser beings has even been accepted to a degree by the goblins themselves. Notably, we're told that when a group of goblins was rounded up to be enslaved, they went passively and did not fight back. As Vimes begins investigating the murder of a goblin and then later the slavery of the goblins, however, he has cause to interact with them. And in the course of these interactions, he realizes that rather than being vermin, they are thinking and feeling beings just like him. He speaks to a goblin who is air quotes civilized. She can speak his language and play the harp. And on talking to this goblin, on coming to the realization that they are people, Vimes remembers the goblin head mounted on the wall of the pub, and he thinks to himself, someone is going to burn. And then just a few pages later, Vimes goes to the pub, puts the landlord in a headlock, and tells him that if he doesn't take the goblin head off the wall, then he's going to set the building on fire. And I can't tell you how cathartic this was to read after slogging through 7 novels of Harry Potter's passive, uninterested acceptance of the world as it is. Imagine a hero who gets actually angry at injustice and then does something about it. What a treat. Also, goblins don't have rights in the Discworld. There's nothing illegal about rounding up goblins and shipping them off somewhere, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's legal or not, and it doesn't matter if the goblins protest or not. Snuff says slavery is still a crime. Now, Snuff ends, spoiler alert, with goblins being granted rights and protections under the law. Because obviously, if your story is about a systemic injustice and you want your heroes to triumph and have a happy ending, then that injustice needs a systemic correction. And of course, the goblin's head comes off the wall of the pub. Now, I don't know if Snuff was intended to be a response to Rowling's house elves at all, but the bit with the stuffed head mounted on the wall certainly makes it read as though it is. If Rowling had written Snuff, Vimes would save the one goblin he met who could play the harp, and the rest of them would still be on the tobacco plantation. Actually, the first Fantastic Beasts movie has just...
We'll get there. We'll get to the Fantastic Beasts. Not so much there, but we'll get there. Because that's where Joanne happened to lose the whole plot. But first, let's review what makes cool goblins so cool. So I listed up some cool goblin traits. These are just like neutral or good or just any, this is what makes goblins cool, right? Well, first of all, they're short little guys, just little. They're funny looking. Maybe they got green skin or a frog face, or they're furry with a rat schnoz. Usually they have big ears and exaggerated proportions. Sometimes they're more animal and sometimes they're more human. Next, they're usually, they're weirdos. They just got like strange habits usually, and traditions and interests and focuses, and all the best goblins are just little weird little guys, just little lovable fucked up guys in my opinion. Goblins are usually gross or just somehow icky, either by their physical nature or their descriptive nature, like how they smell, or just by how they're treated by society at large. Like, they're just depicted as unsavory, and yeah, I think that's cool, okay? Or just, like, at least normal and okay. Goblins are usually associated with the underground or cave dwellers or very dark forests or just dark, dank alleyways are where gobos are most at home. Goblins are usually often magical, and they almost always possess some like innate magical abilities or added prowess in mysterious energies of the earth or whatever. Goblins are more often than not homies. And that's just how I say it. They're just cool if you're cool. They might give you a special gift or take you on a cool adventure if you're down. And if you're chill enough, they'll hang out with you. Well, that lost my place. But like, if you do your homies dirty, if you do a homie dirty, you can expect him and all his friends to come fuck you up, right? It's just how it goes. Anyone with street smarts knows this, and goblins all go back to the OG lessons in street smarts. So it's just be kind, be grateful, and be cool. That's it. And then, if not part of a hive mind or mob, goblins are often accompanied by more goblins. It's just typical goblin thing. They got buds. It's not uncommon for them to like be in gangs or tribes or whatever. Just to do God knows what. And then finally we come to, well, not finally, we're not finally there. This is finally, from the wrap up, come to some of the bad goblin traits throughout literature. And I'm not trying to say that these are these are both bad in the sense that they're traits displayed by goblins that are written to be as antagonists to the story. And they're also traits that are not explicitly what makes a goblin a goblin. Like, they're usually unique to their story, and so you can just consider this examples of the worst kinds of gobos. So I got like demonization. They're sometimes portrayed as literally evil or hellspawn instead of being simple earth spirits, like in pagan lore. They're explicitly unchristian. When written in Christian literature context, goblins often represent a non-Christian outsider or straight up Jewish people. Rituals and slaughter. Goblins often display weird, gross witch rituals that involve blood or slaughtering animals or even sacrificing children. Hopefully YouTube's not going to censor the shit out of me. I don't know. We'll see. Goblins are often usually depicted as wanderers. Sometimes they appear as invaders or vagrants. They're often depicted as carnal, lecherous, pretty much just like when they're portrayed as defilers of the innocent. Goblins are just extra nasty little sex pests. They're often depicted poisoning wells, sometimes literally, sometimes just in the metaphorical fucking with you sense, like just fuck your society, fuck your well. Goblins are often portrayed, when those who are portrayed as greedy are especially greedy for gold and wealth and power, though not always depicted as being greedy. That's for sure. They're often, they conspire to usurp the power structures, like the government or whatever. Like, in one of the stories where the goblins are pretty much like, fuck your taxes, we're not paying your taxes, and if you continue to try and make us pay your taxes, we're gonna flood your town. They're not interested in your government, but they will maybe fuck it up for fun and profit. That's nasty gobbo trait. Another bad one is they're often dirty or diseased or deformed or beastly somehow, or it's just plain ableism, basically. And then they're often portrayed as baby-stealing kidnappers. At the behest of lovely, bored teenage girls, goblins will steal any annoying baby brother, if so wish for. Yeah. So, let's talk about Joanne's goblins. Goblins? Goblins. Cabos. Because Joanne J.K. Rowling, Joanne Karen Rowling, I believe Karen's her middle name. I don't know. Look it up. She uniquely characterizes her goblins, and so let's go over how she uniquely characterizes. As Hagrid introduces the creatures within the first 100 pages of the first novel, he says, "They're goblins, airy, clever as they come, but not the most friendly of beasts." So, Hagrid might be an anti-gobbo. That's probably in the text there. Anyway. Also, Bill Weasley states of goblins. We're talking about a different breed of being. Dealings between wizards and goblins have been fraught for centuries. There has been faults on both sides. I would never claim that wizards have been innocent. However, there is a belief among some goblins, and those at Gringotts are perhaps the most prone to it, that wizards cannot be trusted in matters of gold, treasure, and that they have no respect for goblin ownership. So, best to leave the gold to the goblins, right, Bill? Okay. So, also, I have a quote, not from the book, but in 2007, the year the Order of the Phoenix movie was released, and also the year that the final installment of the book franchise dropped. That was The Deathly Hallows. A writer and critic named Matt Zetlin, he was one of the early critics to make note of Joanne's goblin choices, describing them as universally hook-nosed, short, and unattractive, especially as depicted in the movies. History of magic lectures at Hogwarts tell tales of centuries of goblin oppression, segregation, mistrust, bad relations, exclusion, and revolts. Later, a couple years later, I found him responding to someone defending Rowling in another blog, claiming that the tropes are just ubiquitous to fairy tale goblins of all kinds, which, as we know, is not true. And Matt replied, Rowling borrows a lot of tropes and stock figures from around fantasy fiction and Victorian novels. But the point with the goblins is not just that they have extremely exaggerated versions of stereotypically Jewish features, but that they also are portrayed as wealthy, greedy, untrustworthy, and powerful creatures who control the banking system of the wizarding world. Once again, they're the wizarding world's bankers. So that's interesting. But does that mean that they are the wizarding world's Jewish people? Not necessarily. And for that, I'm going to go to this really stupid 2014. This 2014 article where somebody famously asked Joanne Rowling if there were any Jewish wizards. Ben here asked, my wife said there are no Jews at Hogwarts. I'm a Jew, so I assume she said that only to be the magical one in the family. Thoughts? J.K. Rowling replied, Anthony Goldstein, Ravenclaw, Jewish wizard. There you go. And then a Goldstein. She also reassured fans that there would be LGBT students at the school. This is again in 2014. Prior to Pottermore website coming out. This was done. She said Anthony Goldstein was actually one of the original 40 students that she created for the book series. And she explicitly stated that there was no, that the only possible religions kept out of Hogwarts would be Wiccans. Yeah, she said, oh, here we go. Yeah, Wiccans. Probably no Wiccans because that kind of, I guess, goes against her version of witchcraft or something. I don't actually know that. And I think it's kind of silly. So, well, earlier this year, they announced the new Hogwarts Legacy game franchise. And with that announcement, there was a lot more criticism that came out, levied at J.K. Rowling and the franchise in general as a whole. I will read. From this one. So I'll read from this Game Rant article a little bit. As I stated, J.K. Rowling did not invent goblins, but she did make some interesting, entirely different choices. She did make them something entirely different from how goblins work in folklore. In folklore, goblins are chaotic and range from tricksters to evil, but they did not really become their own fantasy race until J.R. Tolkien wrote his books. That is untrue. Rowling has made her goblins her own by making them highly intelligent as well as creators and overseers of the wizarded world economy with no alignment to chaos. While the books had them described with hooked noses and being secretive bankers, the films pushed the controversy further by making the goblins nearly identical to Jewish characters in Nazi propaganda. So there was that. And also, let's look at this. This is also, I'll add this in.
What I say is, have you ever seen a Harry Potter movie? And people are all like, ah.
The original controversy. Earlier this year, that sparked off my whole friggin' tangent here. Here you go. Here's
What I say is, have you ever seen a Harry Potter movie? And people are all like, I love the Harry Potter movies. Like, you ever see the scenes in Gringotts Bank? And they're like, I love the scenes in Gringotts Bank. He's like, do you know what those folks that run the bank are? And they're like, what? And they're like, Jews. Let me show you this from, it's the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. I just want to show you a caricature. And they're like, oh, look at that. That's from Harry Potter. And you're like, no, that's a caricature of a Jew from an anti-Semitic piece of literature. J.K. Rowling was like, can we get these guys to run our bank? And you're like, it's a wizarding world. Who should run the bank? Jews.
Yeah, so that's what Jon Stewart had to say. He was actually asked to apologize, I think. Yep, this was the controversy. He backtracked.
Hello, my name is Jon Stewart. I do not think J.K. Rowling is anti-Semitic. I did not accuse her of being anti-Semitic. I do not think that the Harry Potter movies are anti-Semitic. I really love the Harry Potter movies, probably too much for a gentleman of my considerable age. So I would just like to say that none of that is true, and not a reasonable person could not have looked at that conversation and not found it lighthearted.
For serious. Okay. Thank you, John. So that's a lot of where we're coming at from this. So let's actually go over what is the lore behind the goblins and wizarding in Harry Potter franchise. What exactly is going on? Hold on. And to do that, I'm gonna go straight to the Harry Potter fandom wiki. And here's that quote from Bill. The Ravenous fans. You know, I was once a ravenous Harry Potter fan myself. So I understand. And I understand the betrayal. But that's also probably why I'm so invested in this at this point, because I got really into this series at some point in the past, and then I slowly realized that it is some fucked up shit, and also there's better fantasy writers out there that do a much better job tackling social issues with that, and like make me want to be a wizard without wanting to like have to be a wizard. Have to be okay. We'll get in there. We'll get there. So, goblin lore within the Harry Potter franchise is pretty fricked up. Goblins were extremely clever and more than able to stand up to wizards. In fact, the wizarding population treated them poorly, with just evidence of the severe injustice built into the wizard culture. This is straight from the Harry Potter fandom wiki, by the way. This is a compilation. This wiki is a compilation of Jesus Christ, all the fandoms. But it's a compilation of everything from the books, the movies, the auxiliary, what do you call it? All the textbooks. I'm using a lot of information actually some information from the Wombat tests that were like supplemental to the books. I just missed my pin message. Okay. So what it also says about the ironically, the Fountain of Magical Brethren within the Atrium of the Ministry of Magic, the one that gets destroyed in one of the novels, it depicts a goblin alongside with a house elf, a centaur, and they're all gazing admiringly at the witch and the wizard in the statue. So I don't know. I'm getting fussy vibes from the wizards here. Oh yeah, the Star of David on the floor. I think I have a picture of that here. I'll get to that. That they like to say was just coincidence of the opulent Middle Eastern bank that they decided to film in. That they could have covered the floor. They could have covered that up. They didn't though. And they just, they were like, oh, it's flavor. I don't know. It's not so much the floor design or just like the direct. It's more how she treats the goblins overall and how other wizards treat the goblins overall within her series. Let's go through some more history. So, goblins within the wizarding world, they're like kind of like an amalgamation of dwarves too, because they're known for their silver work. Well, let me make this a little bigger. There we go. Ah, yes, the Emily. Yeah. I don't have that scene queued up, but I'll insert it here. I do have some pictures of it though coming up. Throughout the history of goblins, so the first like big thing lore-wise with the goblins, Ragnarok the First was the king of goblins during the lifetime of Godric Gryffindor. And as a king of the goblins, he was also their finest silversmith. He was commissioned by Gryffindor to forge a sword of pure goblin silver with rubies set in the hilt. That's the sword of Gryffindor. By the time Ragnarok had finished the sword, he liked it so much that he sought to steal it back from Gryffindor. He sent a group of his subjects to retrieve the sword, but they were all fought off by Gryffindor. The legend has persisted that within the goblin community, that Gryffindor had stolen the sword. So, okay. Wow. So, that sort of sounds like the goblins might hold some kind of resentment towards the wizards, namely OG Gryffindor himself. Okay. Let's keep reading. So, then we got the Gringotts Bank. The goblins founded Gringotts Bank, which, surprisingly, yeah, the one that they show, that is, it's the only, Gringotts is supposedly the only wizarding bank, at least in the UK. Maybe not in the world, but at least in Britain. So that's interesting that the one wizarding bank in all of Britain also has a Star of David on the floor. But it has nothing to do with Jewish people. That's just aesthetics. So let's keep reading. So then throughout the history of the wizarding world, there's been rebellions where goblins had fought against discrimination and prejudice. They were still considered subservient in the minds of most wizards. And they're forbidden by the Ministry of Magic from carrying wands, which led to even more resentment. And during the 16th century, there was even a goblin serial killer named Yardley Platt, who got his own friggin' chocolate frog. So that's cool. Okay. And then there is more conjecture from the land of the wizards, from the land of the wizards. So let's go to another Gamer Rant article here we go. This is what this Gamer Rant article found out about the Goblin history. So the first documented Goblin rebellion occurred in 1612, where Hogsmeade Village 3 Broomsticks Inn was used as headquarters for the Goblins' forces. This rebellion is believed to be cited due to lack of Goblin representation in the Wizarding High Court of Law. The next documented Goblin rebellion took place in 1752. This is one of the longer running ones. And it only ended when goblins joined forces with another persecuted group, the werewolves. Interesting. And either during the same 18th century rebellion or another one that closely followed, Urg the Unclean became a notable figure in the goblin rebel forces. And his legacy is memorialized in a chocolate frog card. And Urg the Unclean is an interesting one. Let's go back. Here he is. This is Urg the Unclean. And what his story is. At some point in his life, he was publicly dunked in a village pond by a group of young wizards. This event precipitated one of the bloodiest rebellions in which Urg himself was a dissident leader. So pretty much, this goblin named Urg, who was nicknamed the Unclean, was publicly humiliated, and that led to a bloody riot? Okay. I don't know. I'm kind of sympathizing with the goblins here, you guys. Okay, so let's go back. Let's review. Let's go back. Let's go back to the history of a goblin. So, in like the turn of the century, the king of the goblins, Ragnar I, forged a stick-ass sword. So this is my version of goblin history from their point of view. Ragnar I forged a sick-ass silver sword, and that was then stolen by Godric Gryffindor, and the wizards still claim that it was a fair commission. Doubt. In 1474, Gringotts Bank was founded in London, England. For this, the goblin named Gringott got his own chocolate frog, but also within that same time frame, there was Yardley Platt, who killed an unknown number of goblins just for fun. He also got a chocolate frog card, so that doesn't seem quite fair. Okay, so in 1612, goblins in England, they organized the BOG. The BOG is the Brotherhood of the Goblins. The protest to demand representation within magical high court. They do run the banks and everything, right? And these protests were violently shut down by the goblin, and they were shut down, and the goblins' requests were denied, and Wizarding history recorded it as that is the first goblin rebellion. It was just their demand for representation. And then we have, in 1752, when Urg the Unclean organized a protest after a group of rude young wizards dunked him in the village pond. He got a chocolate frog card for that, by the way. This protest escalated into violence and a riot, and it continued for nearly 10 years, ending only with the aid of the gay werewolves. And then in 1890, around comes Ranrock, the events of the upcoming Hogwarts Legacy game, where apparently Ranrock, who is a powerful wizard capable of wielding magic without a wand, from the brief gameplay that fans have seen so far, it seems as though there may be more to this rebellion than the Ministry is letting on. Which is weird. I also found within the history some other reasons why the goblins might have had reason to rebel, and eventually had enough by 1890, which is an interesting date. I'll get there. But some other notable events that I didn't write down here. But in the 1700s, there was an accidental death of a goblin named Nagnock. Nagnock. He was a Gringotts Wizarding Bank goblin, and he was killed by an untrained security troll sent by the Ministry of Magic. And that was all the information I could find about it. So that sounds really sus. Okay. And then there was another one. This one was, there was a goblin activist who was imprisoned after he attempted to kill 3 wizards by shrinking them down and trying to crush them. So apparently he can use wandless magic too. Seems like most goblins can, so... Anyway. Maybe he got a hold of a wand, and that's... I found this, but it seems like this happened in, like, the 1990s? I don't know. But there was a whole riot called the Chipping Clodberry Riot that happened after Hodrod, the Goblin, Hodrod the Horny-Handed, attempted to kill 3 wizards by shrinking them down and trying to crush them by stepping on them. But keyword is tried, and it's unsure if he was successful. So his imprisonment was met by protest by the Brotherhood of Goblins, and this whole event contributed to another big riot, the Chipping Clodberry Riot, which is just said to have been very bloody, very, very violent, because a goblin attempted to shrink and kill 3 wizards, but failed. Wonder why he wanted to shrink them. Doesn't mention anything about that. And then I also found another one in 1865, decision by the Ministry of Magic to leave full control of Gringotts Bank in Goblin hands. But considering I did not find any other mention of like wizards gaining any amount of control over goblins in any way in regards to Gringotts, that seems like political shenanigans on the wizard part. But that was like on one of the tests. One of the wombat tests. Or it's possible that with this latest game, the latest rebellion within the game is going to be treated differently. Maybe it's going to be less political bullshit and more akin to just good old goblin hysteria. So this is the PlayStation blog, which has a bunch. I'm just like pretty much advertising for this upcoming game that I don't even want to play. But via all this, what it says regarding Ranrock is that Ranrock has seen a glimmer of magic that wizard kind tried to hide, even from themselves. And he wants that power in particular. His worldview is skewed by his hatred of wizards, which makes his alliance with the dark wizard named Victor Rookwood particularly tenuous. Once Ranrock gets what he wants, no one will be able to stop him, and the wizarding world will be doomed. So who knows what the fuck he is actually on about? Yeah, so God damn it, this game looks so fun. I hate this. I hate that I want to play it so bad. Okay, here's the thing. Here's come here. Here's the thing. If I'm going to play this game, not this game, this game. If I'm going to play this game, I'm going to make 2 top priorities. And those top priorities are, 1, yeah, it's almost Ragnarok. My 2 top priorities are, 1, I'm going to try and obtain this game through Goblin methods, like trading rocks or something. So if anyone wants to trade a cool looking leaf for this game for me, that'd be cool. But otherwise I might find another method. But also 2, if I happen to play this game, I'm also definitely going to attempt to break it by being a huge Goblin sympathizer and doing everything I can to be a goblin within this game. I mean, where is it? Like, you can create your wizard, right? I'm gonna make the shortest, greenest little motherfucker. Hell yeah. Okay, after I steal the game. Because here's the thing, okay? Here's the thing. I kind of have to get on my little soapbox now. Just real quick little soapbox here. Because I personally, I know what side of history I want to fall on. And I'm, like I said, I'm slightly psychic, okay? But only if I have something to go off of. And right now, I do have something to go off of. I've seen the road behind us, and I see the paths ahead of us. I'm talking real life now. And I, for one, gonna get cryptic, but I said never again. I don't know about you, but I said never again. I said never again when I visited the remnants of a Nazi concentration camp in Germany. And I said never again when I visited the remnants of a Japanese concentration camp in Washington State. And I'm going to get choked up saying this, but I had the honor to look at an actual Holocaust survivor in the eyes during a field trip to the Holocaust Museum in Los Angeles. And I told her never again. And I see things happening again. And I said never again. So I'm going to do something. And that's why I'm going to talk about history. One second. Okay. So now I'm going to talk about some real world history, and we're going to start to pivot into some real dark shit. And how long into the stream are we? Okay, we're not even an hour in. That's not bad. Okay. Okay. Now, this content is going to get heavy coming up, but I'm going to try and be as lighthearted about it as possible, because I got you guys. I got you. We're going to cover some of the most atrocious parts of human history coming up, but I'm going to try and do it as lightheartedly as possible. But here's our big bad warning. Warning. I'm about to get into some really unsavory shit, like Nazi propaganda, anti-Semitism, genocides. I'm probably going to talk some more shit about some Christians, and I'm probably going to end up saying or phrasing something in a way that will not age well. 80 minutes in? Oh. Oh. YouTube's lying to me. Cool. Anyway. Yeah. So I'm probably going to end up saying something that might not age well. So I'm very aware of that, and I'm trying to walk a line here. So please bear with me. And if I say anything that goes too far or show any visuals that are just a little too much, just yell at me. But also, where do we start? Where am I gonna, let's start, so, what about that nose? What about the Jewish nose? It's probably one of the biggest parts of, or one of the most distinct parts of anti-Semitic cartoon work since the very beginning of anti-Semitic cartoons back in friggin' medieval times, which is actually what this picture at the top here is one of the oldest known anti-Jewish caricature sketches from, it's actually an elaborate doodle in the upper margin of an English royal tax record from 1233. Oh, you can't see the date. 1233. Anyway. It shows three bizarre-looking Jewish men standing inside the castle, or supposedly the castle. This is one of the Jewish men. There's another Jewish man. I don't know where the other one is. And they are being attacked by a host of cartoonish, horned, beak-nosed demons. Other larger demons, and this larger demon is tweaking the freakishly long noses of the two Jews. There you go. Yeah, it's so interesting to note in this very old medieval cartoon. The Jewish people aren't even the goblins. In this one. So yeah, this is just the early depiction is actually just like a bad artist's way to differentiate between different types of guys, and that is where a lot of the caricature originated from in early art. But then like the Crusades happened, and more things happened. And we get to more ugly shit. So the bigotry and the general mistrust and religious rivalry between Judaism and Christianity, coupled with basic ethnic bigotry and a sprinkle of everything else. For now, just keep these stained glass depictions in mind. And this depiction of the Judensau, I'll actually mention this later in a clip. But pretty much this kind of thing went on through medieval times and the Crusades and into the 1800s, where the rumors and the general fucking shit culminated in what history has gone on to call the most dangerous lie. And I'm going to talk about the protocols. I'm about to talk about the protocols. If you're aware of these, you know. If you're not aware of these, if you just like tangentially know, or just barely heard about these, you might want to listen up. Because this is some fucking bullshit. This is the OG conspiracy theory, okay? This is the OG bullshit nugget to end all nuggets. And it started here. So let me make something clear as fucking glass before anything else that I talk about with these protocols of the learned elders of Zion. It's a work of complete fiction. It's completely made up. Not only is it completely made up, but it's also plagiarized. I'm not going to get into all of that because that's a whole thing all in itself. But I will open up this. There is, this is a whole study of studies breaking down the protocols, where it came from, where it originated, how it happened. There's this whole book called A Rumor About the Jews by Stephen Eric Bronner. And I don't have the whole book, but this abstract from the book pretty much explains what the protocols were all about very well. So I will read it here. It consists of the supposed minutes from 24 sessions of a Congress held by representatives from the 12 tribes of Israel and led by a grand rabbi whose purpose was to plan the conquests of the world. This Congress never took place. Never happened. The pamphlet is actually a crude forgery created by the Okhrana, or secret police of Imperial Russia. It first appeared in 1903 and incorporates many of the most vicious myths about Jews handed down over centuries. Used initially to blame Jews and their supposed civil allies, the Freemasons, for the 1905 revolution in Russia, the protocols would become a welcome export around the world. If not simple hatred, then pogroms. And if not pogroms, then even worse followed in its wake. And it was imploded by royalty and was embraced by counter-revolutionaries, and the Nazis made it required reading. This is all true. It still serves as a staple of numerous fundamental conservative, neo-fascist, and anti-Semitic groups in the United States and throughout the world. Yes, this is the OG baby daddy of everything Alex Jones and has spun up into his platform. It all comes from this baby. This bullshit. And so bonus. Yeah. But before these actual formal publications, so the protocol started off as a bunch of rumors and a bunch of like meeting notes and like essays and shit posts and such. And before these formal publications were made for the elite to consume and discuss, there were more early circulations that depicted the same information, the same lies and such. Same kind of lies and such in meme format, essentially. This is old school meme shit. And these kinds of things were all packaged together so that this cartoon medium could greatly help portray anti-Jewish sentiments to less literate or an international audience, or just, stupid people. Here's an article from Matthew Bagel from 2017. That's gonna actually... And these are a couple of the comics here in the background, just caricatures. I think you're gonna see bigger ones, but yeah, just, classy. This stuff was all pretty much zines. Pretty much this was all passed around via zines in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And here is an article from 2017 regarding this kinds of cartoons. What was the part? Cartoons served as an illustrated material because they seemed close to the nation's pulse It's just overall. Okay, so here are a couple of these early memes. I'm calling them memes, but they're cartoons and stuff. This is supposedly a future Jewish utopia that is pretty anti-Semitic, actually. I won't get into that one. This one, this cartoon symbolizes the fear and hatred, as well as ambivalent and grudging respect for commercial success generated by Jewish aggression. I think it's the dialect down here. It says, "You think the Anglo-Saxons are going to rule the earth?" And the Jewish man responds, "Well, maybe they might, but that doesn't prevent the Jews from owning it." So that's nice. Here's a cute little comic. Just a little classy, some casual anti-Semitism here. While the other figures in this cartoon are identified by their trade or where they live, the Jewish man is defined by his religion and body type, which included a large nose, a fat belly, and bowed legs. That's this little guy here. Charming. This is another gross cartoon. I thought this was interesting. The women are ostensibly overdressed for a promenade, a hostile criticism that regularly appeared in news stories about Jews at resorts. Those in the water or on the beach are Christians fleeing from the Jews. Ho, 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 ho. I didn't read that one. This is the picture I had superimposed on my workstation. So this is a cartoon that shows a bunch of immigrants arriving in America. Oh, pardon me. And the caption is, "For the exclusive use of the persecuted." And even the ship, everything in this picture has anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish characteristics. Down to the friggin' fish in the water. It's just not very nice. I got old Scrooge here. This one is one of many cartoons concerning Jews and their quest for jewelry, even in possible life-death situations. And that's okay. And this one, it's noted here, even good-looking octopuses were never used to describe Christian organizers of big business cartels. Yeah. Wait, which year was that? This one's 1891. Yeah, 1891. This one's probably the worst. This one's from 1891. And it shows the money-hungry image of an American entrepreneur who literally kills Native Americans and sells inferior and rotted goods to Africans and Asians. It's not an American, but a Russian Jew portrayed as Uncle Sam. He acts as a surrogate for Christians who do not want to admit their own financial aggressiveness. Interesting. Actually, yeah, the label, this is all labeled Ben Garrison style, but yeah, the label on his neck says Russian Jews. So, and then this one, a top-hatted obese man wearing what is probably a gold chain. Reminds viewers of Jewish departures and evictions from countries dating back to ancient Egypt. And it reminds the readers, "We are the people, the downtrodden one. They have always persecuted us, but we get there all the same." One might read this as a celebration of Jewish strength and fortitude in the face of continued hatred, but yeah, no, that's anti-Semitic as fuck. And we'll we'll get back around to that. Yeah, so this shit was really pervasive in America and in Russia and in Germany at the turn of the century, and it led to some fucking shit. And now I'm gonna talk about some fucking shit. So all this shit, it directly emboldened the Russian secret police with a means of which to strengthen the position of the weak Tsar Nicholas II and discredit the reforms of the radicals and liberals in Kiev who sympathize with the Jews. Wait, hold on. I'm about to lose you. So instead of listening to me ramble, this is I'm gonna play a clip from a movie. An old movie. A great movie. A movie I highly recommend. Hold on. We're getting there. Here we go. So, instead of rambling about this, let me show you a scene from Fiddler on the Roof.
It's almost the Sabbath.
What happened to your horse? Look at this! Look what it says in the paper! Look!
What's the matter, Alpha?
The paper has some cartoons from fucking cartoons in it.
Talk about. Well, my paper came to the post office today like it does every week. Though usually it comes on a Thursday, but sometimes it comes
Avram, that's not talking. That's babbling.
Tell us
The
the
news,
news.
what does it say? What is it? Quiet!
Talk about. Well, I was reading my paper. Is nothing very important, a story about the crops in the Ukraine and this and that.
Avram, talk.
And then I saw this.
All right. We all see it. What does it say?
In a village called Razhenka, all the Jews were evicted, forced to leave their homes. For what reason? It doesn't say. Maybe the Tsar wanted their land, maybe a plague.
May the Tsar have his own personal plague.
Amen.
What's the matter with you? Why don't you ever bring us some good news?
It's not my fault. I only read it. An edict from the authorities.
May the authorities grow like onions with their heads in the ground.
Amen.
What good will your cursing do?
Oh.
You stand around, you curse, and you chatter, and you don't do anything.
I bet he's a radical.
You'll all chatter your way into the grave.
Excuse me. You're not from this village.
No.
Where are you from?
Kiev. I was a student in the university there.
Tell me, is that a place where you learned how not to respect your elders?
That is where I learned there is more to life than talk. You should know what's going on in the outside world.
Careful, my paper.
Why should I break my head about the outside world? Let the outside world break its own head. Well put.
He's right. As the good book says, if you spit in the air, it lands in your face.
Nonsense. You can't close your eyes to what's happening in the world.
He's right.
He's right and he's right. They can't both be right.
You know, you are also right.
He is right. He's too young to wipe his own nose. Good Sabbath, then. University Sabbath.
Here, good Sabbath.
Good Shabbos, David.
Good Sabbath. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. Here. Good Sabbath. Good Sabbath.
Have you? The rabbi's order.
Oh, of course. So you're from Kiev,
Perchik.
Perch. So you're a newcomer here, huh? As Abraham said, I'm a stranger in a strange land.
Moses said that.
Forgive me, forgive me. As King David said, I'm slow of speech and slow of tongue.
That was also Moses.
For a man with a slow tongue, he talked a lot. Here, a Perchik. Have a piece.
I have no money, and I'm not a beggar.
Take it. It's a blessing for me to give.
Very well. For your sake.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, it's no crime to be poor.
In this world, it is the rich who are the criminals. Someday their wealth will be ours.
Oh, that would be nice. If they would agree, I would agree.
And who will make this miracle to come to pass?
People. Ordinary people.
Like you?
Like me.
And until your golden day comes, Perchik, how will you live?
By giving lessons to children. Do you have any children?
I have 5 daughters.
5.
Daughters.
Girls should learn too. Girls are people.
A radical.
Go away.
I'd be willing to teach them. Open their minds to great thoughts.
Yeah? I'd like them to know the good book.
Well, the Bible has many lessons for our times.
Perchik, I'm a very poor man. But food for lessons, huh? Good, good. Stay with us for the Sabbath. Of course, we don't eat like kings, but we don't starve either. As the good book says, when a poor man eats a chicken, one of them is sick.
Where does the book say that?
All right. It doesn't exactly say that, but someplace it has something about the chicken. Good Sabbath.
Good Sabbath.
Good Sabbath.
Good Sabbath indeed. Well. But, so this is from 1971 adaptation of Fiddler on the Roof, which is a musical set in the Ukrainian ghetto village of Anatevka in the year 1905 in hold on. Hold on.
You just got banned.
It banned me?
It banned you.
Straight up?
Yeah.